Now, you and your wife are foster parents.
So we are foster and adoptive parents.
Yes.
So our youngest son, who's 5, Jojo, came to us through foster care, and we adopted him 3 years ago. And he was not our very first foster placement.
Okay.
But to start at the beginning of the story, when Kim and I were dating, and things were moving along, at some point start talking about family stuff. I don't even know. I think we probably weren't even engaged yet. But oh, do you want to have kids? Yeah, I want to have kids. And I think I was the one who brought this up very casually early.
Yeah.
Early years, and said, we both have one sibling, and I've always thought it would be nice to maybe have 3 kids. And I don't know what you would think about this, and maybe it's not a good idea, but like I've always thought it would be cool to maybe like have a couple of kids and adopt one.
Yeah.
And I was like, full transparency, I don't have any idea how it works.
Yeah.
But she's like, yeah, actually, I think that sounds pretty neat. And so years pass, we do get married, and over a good span of years, we would try to find places where we could learn more. So a kid that I went to high school with, he and his wife, at the end of a long kind of infertility journey, adopted 2 daughters. And he professionally was doing writing in his day job. So he was kept a blog for a while about their journey. And I learned a bunch just by reading his stuff.
Yeah.
But we also called them up at one point and chatted for an hour or so. And they just sort of said, ask us anything. And similarly, for a while, we were going to a church in Monroe, and the priest who was at that church, and his wife, who was also a priest who had a different parish, were foster parents to many kids.
Okay.
And had, I think at that point, maybe 4 that they had adopted along the way. And so, we would occasionally pepper Father Kurt with some questions. They now live out in Wyoming. I think it's Wyoming. And that to us was so important because you hear the good and the bad.
Yes, of course.
And people would sort of point out things to, ask for us to ask each other and to think through, sort of like, if you're serious about this, just
consider this. And
And even once we started to get into it, I remember talking to a parent at a after school event for Finn, and she had 2 daughters they had adopted through foster care. And she sort of blurted out unsolicited advice, but I was ready for it. I was like, I want to listen to whatever this lady has to say.
Yeah.
And she said, the people who work at DCF are so dedicated and they're so overloaded. And the system is quirky, and there are things that you won't like about the way that it works. But she's like, the hardest piece for her that she had to get used to is that things just don't always connect the way you hope that they might, or you feel like they should.
Yeah.
She's like, that's just the way the system is. And if you know that going in, and it proved to be something that at certain points, like I would bring up to Kim after we got off a call and found out about some weird delay or some paperwork or process. Because we started to learn about DCF after our first biological son was born.
Okay.
And before Kim was pregnant with Jack, our second son. And then we found out that she was pregnant. And we actually had to kind of put our training on hold.
Okay.
Because they said, you cannot be a newly licensed foster home until your new baby is 6 months old.
6 months, okay.
At least that was the rule at the time.
Yeah.
And so I said earlier, timeline-wise, Jack arrives and then COVID arrives.
True. Yes,
so we jumped back in, and we were trained in the first Zoom class that DCF offered.
Okay.
Which ended up being great for us because we would get a sitter, and they would watch baby Jack and Finn, and we would go downstairs for a 2-hour session once a week for 8 or 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And we kind of that worked really well for our working parent lives, And so we made it through and got licensed, and we had one very brief respite placement, and it was right around the holidays of 2020. He was with us for 48 hours. Both he and his sister had come into care at the same time, but we had said we only had room for one.
Yeah.
And they found a place that could take both. And we said, please, he should be with his sister.
Yeah.
And, but by the time we went through those 48 hours, we were like, this went okay. The boys seem fine. We kind of did a check-in and, asked for a pass until it was the new year. But, we started taking care of JoJo as a foster in mid-January of 2021.
And how old was he?
He was newborn. He was a few days old. He was actually discharged from Bridgeport Hospital to us. Yeah. So, and I remember this is one of those moments I'll never forget, but because of a few things with what was going on while he was in the maternity ward, they told us about this baby. And then it was a little longer before we could go. And so Kim got a call during a work day, and she was able to go and just see him. And he was discharged a day or two later. But I couldn't make it. I had to go home to the other two boys.
Yeah.
And she sent me a text, a picture with her holding him. And she said, "What do you think?" And, it was like, when the other two boys came out at the delivery, it's just like, he's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think he's amazing, and can't wait to meet him.
Yeah.
And I think that is to me one of the hardest to describe dimensions of the foster care challenge, is that for me, I know, you can't stop your built-in wired instincts to attach and to care. And the system can feel dangerous in that way. We have friends that we met through those licensing classes that had a daughter, a foster daughter, that came as a baby to them and ultimately went to biological family after living with them for almost 2.5 years. And it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And the DCF in Connecticut, their mandate by law is that reunification with biological family is the gold standard.
Yes.
And there are times where I think, if workers were able to be fully candid, they'd say, that doesn't make any sense in this one situation, right?
Yeah.
But I get why it's that way. I feel like that's sort of how it maybe needs to be. But that doesn't mean it's easy, and it feels like it means for a family that's caring for a child who's kind of, the state is that child's guardian when you're a foster home. There are variables that you know so little about that could impact your ability to be in this child's life, and that's really scary.
How talk to me a little bit about the conversation that you and Kim had to prepare yourself for what may or may not happen, right? Was there a conversation there? Because I feel like, in the back of your head somewhere you're thinking, hey, we have JoJo here, right? He may he came straight here, but he may not be with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you prepare for that?
I think there's a piece of the whole thing where it may be almost a little bit, maybe in some ways it's easier on parents that, kind of pay attention in the training piece.
Yeah.
Because they are very upfront about how the system works and what its priorities are. And I actually, one of the things I've said to many people over the years is I feel like Connecticut DCF's training to me was very good. A lot of it is about trauma, and that to me makes sense because so many of the kids who are in care aren't babies being released from the maternity ward. They have been present for some piece of the situation that has led to them being taken from their biological family, and that can have all kinds of impacts on, you know, how they act, how they can connect with the people in a new setting, and so they need to train people, because the class, they don't know if, you know, Kim and I, in this funny reality, knowing other foster families, I feel like when we talk to folks who don't take part in foster care, it's not uncommon for people to say, you know, oh, this is such an amazing thing that you guys do. And I appreciate that. And I, you know, I agree and I recognize that. But also in the foster community, we look at other folks and at some of the things that they say yes to that we haven't, at least at this point.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh gosh, that seems way harder than, you know, that, you know, because there are folks that have kids coming in and out of their house all the time on emergency placements, or, you know, who are absolutely throwing their arms around those tough cases with teenage kids who, you know, might have gotten beaten up or all kinds of stuff. And to us that, you know, it's like, we've had a few different kids come into our home, but that's a piece of the picture that's like, gosh, that's really hard.
Yeah,
like,
I think it's almost natural for some of us to feel that way about certain things, right? Mm-hmm. I think that you know, sometimes it's hard for us to realize what we do, what we've done, and when other people kind of call it out, you know, it's something that's hard to accept because you're like, oh, but I'm just doing this, you know. This just comes natural to me, you know. And so I can kind of understand where you're coming from, you know. But I still think that what you guys do is amazing. I agree with them. I told you before the cameras were turned on that my aunt, you know, she passed away 20 over 20 years ago. But before she passed away, for a while she was doing, you know, the same. She was a foster parent, and we would come over and they would have different kids there from time to time, and sometimes we'll come over and we, you know, you tend to kind of get, you know, connected to some of these kids, right? Because they're around for a little while, and so I remember, you know, seeing that and not really understanding at the time what was happening, but looking back at it now, thinking about how amazing it was what she was doing, you know, taking, in a way, kind of like random kids, he's coming into your house and really just like taking them in, and so much so that you know, she ended up adopting, you know, my cousin Fabian, and so, you know, just thinking about that, I feel like it is an amazing thing what you and your wife are doing, because it's something that a lot of us talk about, because my wife and I have talked about it, but it's a huge step, you know.
Well, and I also, one of the things I've said a lot when, you know, Kim and I will go on social media and put ourselves out there and say, you know, if you're thinking about this and you want to talk to somebody, hit me up, send me a DM, you know, we'll find a time to talk to you. Because I absolutely mean that. You know, I would always be happy to tell people whatever I could about our experience. That's all I can really give them,
of course.
But you know, she and I have also had conversations that sound a little like, you know, we're currently at our, you know, we have our foster daughter. So we have 4 kids in our house, which is, I know, probably to many people who watch this, a little crazy. But I think that's capacity. And I've said to Kim once or twice, half joking, you know, like, well, maybe one day if we're empty nesters and these 4 have all moved along, maybe we'll decide at that point we just want to, you know, have a kid come and go from time to time. And we'll see what that's like. And she's like, no, at that point we're gonna sell the house and move to Florida. You know, it's like,
well,
so, travel the globe.
I think what really makes it amazing is that you and Kim are doing this while also balancing your careers, right? You haven't let go of that, right? And I think that's important because it allows you to still be you it allows you to still kind of pursue the things that you want to pursue, and her the same thing, within her career, while also, being the help that you are not only to your own children, but again to your foster daughter, and your adopted son. And so I think that even makes it even more amazing, what you guys are doing, because sometimes you as a parent myself, you think about just the load of like balancing work and at home and kids, again, I think that makes it even more amazing. And there's no question to follow up to this. It's just a lot more amazing,
But I think that one of the things that's funny and hard to get across necessarily in words is just, I think that being parents to a foster child is so similar, except for the process piece, to being parents to our biological children. It's like, especially in that piece that feels risky when you have the phone calls and get the check-ins on what's going on with the process. But it's the same piece by which the risk has everything to do with the fact that you now love this child, and you've spent more and more and more days and months and gone through these milestones, and so it's the same way with our boys that the two of us made. It's this journey that you're just in, and every day you're getting up and getting them off to camp or school or whatever, and you're right, it is a balancing act. But interestingly, one recent learning for me as we've added a fourth was, in some ways, I've told people this at work, and I feel clear that some of them think I must be lying, but
okay.
The unexpected plus of a fourth kid in our mix, at least, is she's come in, and the logistics at this point, and this could change any second, could be changing at home as we're talking, is like there's enough extra that it feels like it forces everything into some weird alignment that's been working well.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have predicted that at all, but it's been weirdly smooth, so much so that I definitely don't trust it.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And it, it may be gone tomorrow, but for now I'll take it. And the funny piece of the 6 humans in our house is that the 5 of us who were there before she came along have all just gelled around this new person. And in the first days, I said to my wife, this little baby might get really overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like these 3 big boys running around all over the place, like Tasmanian devils. And no, not at all. She's just unfazed. She just moves through.
Yeah.
Does her little things.
I think it's amazing what we as humans are capable of.
Yeah.
And most of the time we don't know what we're capable of until it's right in front of us, and we have to kind of handle it, And I think that's what we're talking about in terms of like, the fourth one comes. It's 6 now, and somehow it just gels together.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we underestimate how us as humans are able to just kind of like deal with what life gives us, right?
Yeah.
And I think that your situation at home is a clear example of that.
Yeah.
Before we end, I do want to get into a question, and I'm not sure if this is something that you really want to talk about or not. It's just something that's kind of in my mind. We touched up on it a little bit before we came on cameras. But I want to talk a little bit about conversations, right?
Yeah.
Conversations that maybe you've already had, and conversations that you're gonna have, right?
Okay.
Did you? And this is, I'm super interested, and maybe for anybody who maybe is watching and maybe is thinking about, becoming a foster parent, and maybe they already have kids. How was the conversation with your kids in terms of, adopting, their brother?
Yeah.
Because one of your son is 11. So when you adopted your son, he was probably about 8, So he's old enough to where he understands. He knows what's going on,
Yeah.
How was that conversation?
Yeah. So back when Jojo first came into our family, our second son was 15 months old.
Okay.
So he was a baby.
He's a baby.
And so he's, known him all along. But he also is enough older that at points he started asking questions. You know, why does JoJo not look like us? So our youngest son has dark skin and curly hair, and very understandable kid questions. And our older son, who was 5 when JoJo first arrived, had a fair number of questions, and also has had times where, you know, the process, you know, we have had placements other than our current foster daughter and our adopted son. So kids who were in our home for a short stretch. Yeah. And I think he has found that really taxing in some moments. And, you know, he's talked to us about that. We've tried to kind of do our best to keep the channels open, which is a challenge. I know your son's 9, right?
Yes.
So, you know, I often ask questions that get not even no answer, but very little response at all. hello. It's like, anyone in there? But I think with the kind of piece where we're thinking about somebody new come into the mix, or like what this could mean, I think Kim and I both have tried to be a mix of kind of intentional about seeking out conversation and accepting if there's not a lot of feedback at that moment, but that maybe it could come back up 6 hours later or a few days later or whenever. And also really trying to, as best we can, embrace when a question does come from them, to sort of engage with it and say, oh, you know, that's a great question. Like, let's talk about that. Okay. And, you know, one of the things we've seen, we had this amazing opportunity earlier this year where we ended up going to Yankee Stadium in connection to the Savannah Bananas.
I saw that.
And they do a lot. They have this charity called Bananas Foster, and at every game they raise funds that go to help support foster families. Okay. So cool. And they celebrate a foster family on the field at each game that they do. And we got to be that family at Yankee Stadium, which was nuts. It was just like we could have a whole other conversation about that crazy, crazy day. Yeah. But one of the things that brought really clearly into my picture is there's a whole set of kind of resources to try to help foster families and adoptive families kind of normalize the conversation, whether that's, you know, storybooks where there's adoption going on with a character, or you know, storybooks where a character asks why their sister or brother doesn't look like them, or things like that. Yeah, that, you know, really do often are written by families that have gone through this to try to say, you know, you know, read them this book when they're still too young to ask the questions themselves, and just get it into the mix so that it is less of it doesn't have to be some big, heavy, earth-shaking thing. Yeah. A lot of it can kind of be little pieces that kind of clarify or adjust, or sort of hopefully also sometimes put their minds at ease, because, you know, I think to me, you know, belonging and acceptance and trust are such important pieces of how, you know, we all feel like we know that we have balance in life, right? And I think as parents, the best thing we can do is to kind of hopefully have them feel like home and us in their lives is something that's synonymous with balance and safety and belonging and encouragement. You know, it's like so.
I like the strategy. I like the strategy more of like, hey, you know, talk to them. Obviously they're younger, so they may or may not. And I get it, because my son sometimes just, and I'm like, no response. Oh, okay, got it. You know, but also kind of just, you know, keeping your ears open to whenever a question does come. You know, make sure you're ready to, you know, talk to them. You know, because you want to make sure that they understand, you know, that, and that they feel comfortable, you know, talking to you, right? I think that's super important now, and even when they get older. Do you feel that you learn anything about yourself through the adoption process? You know, that perhaps it was different from having your two sons?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, I think first off, I think that parenting has been just a constant barrage of lessons
Of
in,
course.
humility and also, we were talking about parents earlier and how, I might answer a question and it makes you say, oh, I think that probably is something you saw a lot when you were growing up,
Yeah.
Um, but I also feel like there have been shocking moments where I'm doing something or saying something and I just suddenly snap into awareness of like, oh my God, I am being my dad in this situation.
Yeah.
Hopefully sometimes in a good way,
Yeah.
also sometimes not in the greatest way. But, I do think that the adoption journey and the foster journey, both to me, has been um, a test of Kim's and my ability to support one another and to really be to kind of approach the process team or process piece as a team. So like we might finish a call with the caseworker or whoever and try to be sure we've got time to be able to touch base for 5 minutes and just feel like, are you okay? Are you
Yeah.
okay? Were there any surprises for you there? Or is that what you were expecting?
Yeah.
Because there's so much with that kind of piece. Is
Yeah.
like, are we where we thought we were, or is there something different than we knew? So, but I feel like it has been a reminder of the resilience that I think we all hold, and it's like kids are so strong in their resilience, but I think that through support networks like family, through conversations, it's I think when talking to people considering the idea of moving ahead with a process, it's been often something that is reassuring to me and reminds me of when we were in that time and kind of makes me reflect on how far we've come. And there's so much that really is the same as quote unquote, our biological kids, our own kids, it's like they're our own kids beyond a really quick moment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's that can feel super scary.
Yeah.
But it also sort of feels like I don't want to in any way try to dampen that impulse. I think that feels like the right way to go. It's just like, all right, they're ours until like somebody rips them away.
Yeah. No, definitely. What would you what would you say to someone out there, man, woman, couple, who's kind of there? They're at the they want to take the step, but they're just not sure.
Yeah.
What will be? I mean, obviously, it's hard to just give out kind of just like a blanket statement in terms of inspiration because everybody's going through different situations. They may have kids, they may not have kids.
Yep.
They may be older, younger. But what is something that you can share to perhaps help someone kind of make the decision?
Yeah. Well, so two things come to mind. One is the need is very real, and I think I knew this just by being somebody who watches the news and stuff like that. But to put a very fine point on it, I went and checked, and the current DCF numbers have about 3,300 kids, a little over 3,300 kids. They're in care in the system in Connecticut,
okay,
today. So, and that's actually a good bit lower than when Kim and I were getting licensed, but also that was early COVID and the system had gotten way backlogged. And I feel like the number was about 6,000 when we were being trained.
Wow.
But there are kids who need a safe place now.
Yeah.
And that, whenever someone's playing this video, that now is going to apply.
Yeah.
So the need is very real. But I also would say, and I do think this is more on the angle of encouraging people to at least look into the possibility. When we were in our first information session, the DCF worker who was running that at some point said, the foster care process is a mutual consent process at every stage of licensing and from there on out. And she said, what I mean by that, telling you all as potential foster parents, is if you're already in training to be licensed and you go through one of the learning sessions and you're like, we cannot handle this, that's okay.
Yeah.
You can tell us, you can walk away. If you can't handle it, you should tell us.
Yeah.
And you should walk
Yeah.
away.
Of course, yeah.
And she's like, and likewise, you all need to trust that if that licensing process is moving along and we see something where we're like, these people should not be foster parents.
Yes, I love that.
We should be telling you.
Yeah.
Maybe you should find a different way to help. You know, I don't think that they actually do that very much. But it really did stick with me just because it felt like that was the right way to orient us at the table, to say, like, you know, keep moving along, but no, this isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
But I do think it's more doable and more manageable than people might expect from the outside. And I think the only way to know if you feel like that's true for a family, for an individual, whoever, is to find out more. You know, because it's the caseworkers, it's the DCF folks who know all of this well enough to fill you in. And it's, you know, people like him and I that will say, yeah, call us. Let's talk through whatever questions you have.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's where you got to go. So
No, that makes that makes a whole lot of sense. And I love the whole idea of, like, hey, listen, like, even if you're 3/4 of the way done with this, you know, if you don't think so, I think it's best that you just, you know, that you be true to yourself and true to us, because, like you said, you know, there's many kids who need this, but they also need, you know, foster parents who actually want to do it, right? Because you don't want to get caught in the middle ground there, and I get it. John, listen, thank you so much for coming over. I know it's getting late; we got to get out of here. I think that tonight's message is a great message. I think that taking that step into becoming a foster parent is a very important one. And I think that with your story, I hope that we're able to at least impact one family out there to say, hey, you know what, let's take that step. Let's do it. Let's try it. You know, that at least the worst that can happen is you try it and you say, you know what, this is not for me. But at least you tried and you gave another child out there an opportunity to perhaps have a happy ending to whatever they're going through. And so I do appreciate you coming here. My doors here are open for you whenever you want to come here and talk more about whatever you want to talk about.
You got it.
We'll definitely do it. If you're still watching, please go down to the description and you'll find their information on how to get in contact with John in case you have any questions, in case you want to make that step and you just don't know who to talk to. John has said already that he's more than willing to have a conversation with you and to help you kind of, you know, get through the process of thinking about whether or not you want to do it. So please make sure you go down there. You also find information on the Sterling House. Is it Sterling House or Sterling Community Center?
So
it used to be, right?
Yeah, in 24 we rebranded the organization to be Sterling Community Center, but the house is always called Sterling House, and a lot of folks in the area know it best as Sterling House. So.
And so the information will be down in the description. Please make sure that you go down there, check them out, and see how you can help. Maybe you can come volunteer. Maybe you can send your kids there. Or maybe if you don't have time, maybe you have a couple of extra dollars, you can send them over, and I'm sure they'll be able to put those into good use. John, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
I
Always
appreciate
a pleasure.
you. Yes. And guys, don't forget, be transcendent.